Hi everyone, this is the second video of the video series, Writing an Academic Essay. This is actually the last video in the series, and the topic of this one is getting the most out of secondary sources. In part one, I ended with a list of search terms that came out of my reading of Faulkner's novel, As I Lay Dying. In this video, I will share my search strategies and comment on the results. If you're unfamiliar with the Galileo search tool, I recommend rewatching Navigating the Library and using databases from Unit 2 before going any further. So for my initial Boolean search using the terms Faulkner, As I Lay Dying, and fish, I wanted to see all the results. So I chose not to use any search limiters. And here you'll see in the second result in the list here, there are my search terms in boldface. And this first result is an article that was originally published in a book. It tells me that in the database record, published in a book, an anthology of articles about Faulkner that's titled Faulkner in the Media Ecology. It was published in 2015. The second item on the list is from an academic journal, a periodical titled The Journal of American Studies. And this article appeared in 1990. And that date, that year, is going to be important for reasons that I will explain later. So when I click on the second item, I get the full database record for it, Faulkner's Totemism. And I notice that there's an access URL. Now, there was no link to a PDF or HTML format for the article to read it online. So I was curious when I saw this access URL. When I click on it, move that out of the way. And when I click on it, I go to this page. Galileo takes me to this page, and there's information there about the article. The same information that's from the database record tells me that it was from the Journal of American Studies, volume 24, number 3, 1990. And then over on the right, there is a link for a preview of the article. And this is kind of nice because I can look at the preview and decide whether or not this article is worth pursuing, even though it's not available to read online. So when I look at the preview, I was reading just on the first page of the preview, I see that Reuben Ellis, the writer, talks about Vardaman there in the highlighted passages that you see there. He says, he talks about Vardaman's monologue, and it simply reads, "My mother's a fish," and he goes on to talk about Vardaman. So this article is very promising, even though, as I said, we can't access it online. So the first two articles, the first one from the book Faulkner and the Media Ecology, and this one from the Journal of American Studies, like I said, they both seem very promising. The problem is that neither one is available to read fully online. So what do we do about that when we discover articles that we can't access online? There are three options to consider, and I will talk about each one of these options. Starting over, that's an option. Checking your library, and interlibrary loan. So I'll talk about all three of these options, the pros and cons of them. Starting with starting over. There's no shame in starting over and using search filters to limit your results to full text scholarly sources. And if you're working under a tight deadline, that may be the prudent thing to do. You don't have time to go to the library. You don't have time to use interlibrary loan services. Maybe you just need to start over and use those search limiters. However, if you do that, the con is there's no guarantee that you will find articles that come so close to your research objectives. The next option is to check your library. So if you really want an article that is not available online, your first option is to see if the library has a physical copy of the book or the periodical in its collection. You can do this online using the Gill online catalog, which I will show you here. You get to this from the library's homepage. You see the Galileo link, and then below it is the link to the Gill catalog. And I will open it, and it looks like this. And you'll see in the search box, I put the Journal of American Studies. I really want that second article. And I already hit the search button and got the result. And curiously, it says in the entry on Gill that it's available online. Well, that was puzzling to me because when I saw it in the Galileo search record, it didn't say that the article was available in PDF or HTML format. So I click on this link just to see what's going on. And I see there's a box that says full text availability. And now it makes sense to me. It says that articles are only available from 2001. And since my article was printed in 1990, it's not available to read online. So that solves that small mystery. So neither the book nor the article are available in my library. So what's the next step? The next step is interlibrary loan. So one advantage to starting the research process early is that if you do come across an article that seems perfect for your project, but it's not available to read online, it's not available in the library, you can request the material using our interlibrary loan services. There are a couple of different ways of doing this, and I'll show you both. The first one is to use what's called the Gill Express. And this is only for books. You cannot get journals, you cannot get periodical articles this way. This is only for books that are held within the USG. And if you click on the Gill Express link, it tells you there's some instructions about how to go through the process of submitting a request. And what it does is it goes through the entire University System of Georgia, the entire library system, and finds the book, and then they will mail it to your home institution's library for you to pick up. If you want an article, however, you're going to have to use a different form. This would be the interlibrary loan request form. This would also be good for books outside of the USG library system. And when you click on it, you see that there's a form that you fill out. You can fill it out online. I'll just scroll through and click on a few things. You'll want to put your name in there, obviously, so they know whom to contact. Make sure you mark that you're a student and that you're looking for an article. And then the title of the article, Faulkner's Totemism. And then the author, Reuben Ellis. And then I put in the title of the Journal of American Studies. And there are some other things to fill out there, but that's basically how you complete the form and click submit. And then the librarians take it from there and contact you when they have the article. They might even email it to you as a PDF. So starting my search over on Galileo, this time I'm going to filter for full text, peer-reviewed, or scholarly journals, and I get a completely different set of results this time. But none of them are quite as promising as what I got the first time I did my search without using any of those search filters. But at least I can read these online, and you can see looking at this list that they all have PDF links with them. And I liked this one. This is the 11th result, and it contains all three of my original Boolean search terms, As I Lay Dying, Faulkner, and Fish, which is kind of hidden by my search box or my text box there. And here's the database record for it, the Galileo search record for it. And don't forget, if there's an abstract, you should read the abstract before you spend any time reading the article. I read the abstract, and it talks about animal metaphors. And so I thought this would be a good article for me to read because of my research topic. And so there's the link to the PDF, which I'll click on, of course. And here it is. Remember, PDFs are basically photographs of the original source. On the top right, there's a button that you can click to download the article so you can print it, but you can scroll through the whole article, read it online, which is great. If you can't find what you're looking for using your search terms, it may be time for you to cast a wider net. And so in this example on the left, I started another Boolean search using Faulkner and As I Lay Dying, but I took out the word fish. And I kept my search limiters in place to ensure that I got only full-text scholarly articles. I got more results this way, of course, but there's a little more work involved now because I have to read the article titles and the abstracts and think more about how these articles could relate to my research interests. And I focused in on this one, Death, Mourning, and Human Selfishness, Faulkner's As I Lay Dying Through a Freudian Lens. This is an article by a scholar named Liam Butchart, or Butchart, I'm not sure how to say his name, and it contains the word mourning, which is close in meaning to the word grief from my original list of search terms. Butchart might say something useful about Vardaman's character, so I decided to go ahead and take a look at this article. Here's the abstract for it. Again, I recommend reading these. And the sentence that really stood out to me is the second one. This paper will examine the psychological reactions of 5 members of the Bundren family to the death of Addie, their mother or wife. So that tells me, 5 members, this writer's probably going to talk about Vardaman. So I want to go ahead and take a look at this article. There's the link to the HTML full text. And when I click on it, it takes me to the website for the online journal, SciArt. And there's the link to the article from the journal's webpage. And there's also some information about the journal, just to confirm that this is a good peer-reviewed academic source. So I click on the article and I start reading it. Again, it's HTML, so there are no pages. But I found this passage about Vardaman and about the fish. So I wasn't expecting it, but I found it, and this is an article I could certainly use in my my project on Vardaman and the fish. Sometimes students ask me, you'll notice the citations here, Tuck 37, Faulkner, the quotations from As I Lay Dying. And students ask me sometimes if I'm quoting one of these passages in my paper, do I need to include the parenthetical citations in my quotations? And the answer is no. If you cite a passage from a secondary source that includes a quotation from another source, either another secondary source or maybe from your primary source, you do not need to include the author's parenthetical citation in your quote. Something else that students sometimes don't think about is another useful research strategy, which is to read the writer's works cited list. Most good scholarly articles will have a works cited list. You might find 1 or 2 articles that you may not have come across otherwise, and then you could look for those. Or at the very least, you might discover 1 or 2 new keywords that you could use to expand your search if necessary. I always look at the works cited lists for my sources. So remember, research is a process of discovery. If you're not successful finding secondary sources that align with your research focus, don't let your disappointment or frustration stymie your progress. You might come across an article that sounds interesting, perhaps on a topic that you never considered before. And that might seem like a change in direction or maybe a step backwards, But serendipitous discoveries like this can re-energize you and restore enthusiasm about your project. The more excited you are about what you're learning, the better your writing will be. So I kept coming across this article in my research on Vardaman and the fish called The Casket in the Corpse, the Wooden Woman and Corporeal Impermanence in As I Lay Dying. And I thought, that sounds really interesting. It didn't have anything to do with my research objectives, but I kept coming across the article. And maybe, if I'm not satisfied with the direction my research is going, I could come back to this article and give it a read. And when I started reading it, I was really impressed. This article is about how Faulkner often associates the Bundren family with wood, with coffins, wood shavings, trees, and so on, which is something that I did note in my annotations to the novel. I thought this article was well written. It's easy to understand. I liked it so much that I would actually consider changing my topic entirely. Maybe. So we're at the end now, and I just want to summarize the entire process that was described in these two videos. First, to read and annotate your primary sources. Next, develop research questions and topics. Create a list of search terms from those questions and topics. And finally, you use those terms to search databases. And try to have fun. And remember that this is a discovery process. Pretty ridiculous. This is the end of the video on writing an academic essay, part 2. Getting the most out of secondary sources.